Hi, I'm Michelle Buxton. I'm the CEO and founder of Mallcomm. We're a tenant engagement and operational integrator to bring tenants together and to bring all your prop tech into one place.
Hello, good morning. My name is Moita. I work for Sonae, that is a real estate company that invests, manages and develops sustainable assets in different countries.
Good morning, my name is Stuart. I'm Group Chairman of Broadway, Malyan Architects and Designers. We have various studios across the world working on a wide range of schemes from Brazil through to China and across Europe, everywhere, with mixed-use retail. Thanks.
Andy Watson of Europa Capital. Europa is a London-based investment manager covering 20 countries across Europe with local partners. We are owned by Mitsubishi Estates, a giant Japanese investor, and they're kind enough to give us capital to seed our funds. We're not a specialist retail player, but we are a specialist mixed-use player.
Good morning, my name is Rossel. I'm Development Director for Hines, principally focused on Cherrywood, which will be the newest scale retail centre in Dublin in 20 years. For those that don't know Hines is founded in 1957. It's a global organisation. We operate in 219 cities. We have 125 billion AUM, and we've completed over 880 developments worldwide.
Yes, hi, I'm Sonju, Business Development Director for a company called Playtime. So we design, manufacture, install, service leisure entertainment solutions for shopping centers, theme parks, etc. Playtime is a US-based company, but we're owned by a company named PlayPower, which is a global corporation with facilities, manufacturing, design, etc. throughout the world.
Great, good. And thanks very much to Hines and Cherrywood for hosting today. Thanks very much, Derek. Maybe just picking up with you, in terms of some of the key trends in the market, what are you seeing at the moment? And then we'll pick up on some of those.
In terms of scale retail, there's obviously a lot of change in the retail industry, and developers need to adapt to that to meet the needs of retailers and customers going forward. The big trends really are a shift towards more density and urban settings for retail versus suburban settings. A lot of emphasis placed on connectivity and interface with public transport, road, rail, bike. Right size retail. The retail boxes by category need to be reshaped and resized, and they need to be repurposed, so they need to get that right. It's experience-led everywhere, and I think it's really important to deeply understand the customer and understand the customer journey and map your developments in that fashion. The other thing is really mixed use and the right balance of those uses so that you create different reasons for different people to come to your centre at different times of day.
Andy, you mentioned there that you're more focused on mixed use. Historically, obviously, you also focused a lot on the retail side. Is this a general trend? I mean, we heard that there from Derek in terms of mixed use. Is it more of a trend for you in terms of the investment side rather than pure retail?
Yeah, I mean, the trend here, MAPIC, is of course the relative disappearance of the retail specialist. It's become a home also for logistics specialists. I had a great day yesterday talking to logistics people, the co-living specialist. So the out-and-out retail advisor is something of an endangered species, and this is kind of like the last sanctuary of that. In terms of what we do in investment, as the house is UK-centric, and UK has seen the worst fall in value because of, I believe, inflexible lease contracts and all that brings with it. The house is very skeptical about retail at the minute, both on the value add side and the core side, which I run, but also on the debt side. So we run debt funds, and there's a block on all three areas of business on retail at the minute.
Okay, good. And Stuart, just, I mean, you mentioned also in your introduction that you've been focusing a lot on, in terms of retail, also mixed use. How do you see that trend at the moment, both in terms of mixed use, but also, I suppose, how you're mixing uses within shopping centres as well and repositioning?
That's correct. I actually call it mixing uses in mixed use, because it's not just about putting a hotel or residential or office building over the top of a shopping centre. It's about activating the retail environment to its fullest, and that means bringing in extra uses and different uses, which we're doing in a lot of the schemes, and it's obviously through co-working and things like that. But in one centre we're actually putting in a university faculty now as well, things like this. So it's activating Monday to Fridays, basically, getting footfall and generating business for the retail environment, which can only be positive.
Okay, good. And just from your point of view, Anna, when you're looking at, obviously in your role, you're looking a lot at the retailers as well, but I guess also food and beverage and increasingly other mixed use coming into centres. What's your sense of the trends there, particularly for, I suppose, for next year and going forward? What are you seeing in terms of changes, maybe from MAPIC last year to MAPIC this year and going forward?
Honestly, I don't think that we are going to face big changes. I think that we are going to continue a trend that already started before. In terms of retail, I believe that we are going to face much more the need to have experiential retail, and that will demand from not only the brands but also the shopping centers, the management teams, the investors, to be much more focused on innovative solutions to offer a different experience when people go to these places, not to buy but to have an experience. And this comes also from the need to complement what today is the e-commerce and the online purchasing that people are doing in a much increasing level. Okay, good.
And Michelle, from your perspective, are you seeing these changes? Because you're obviously looking at communities and creating platforms around that. How are you seeing these changes? Is that something you're seeing within your area of the business?
Yeah, I think everyone's talked about blended use, which is what we obviously do within our product. So we've had to change and look at how lifestyle destinations work today, and it's not just about retail, it's about offices and residential and everything along those lines. I think prop tech and prop tech strategy is becoming much more important, and I think it's something like 89% of investors and owners know they need to have a prop tech strategy, but only a third actually have one. So everyone's going out there just buying sexy things, but actually not looking at what they want to do in terms of creating that prop tech ecosystem going forward. So that's one, and the other is the owners and landlords focus on the tenant as their customer. And that's been a huge change. In my many years in the industry, it was always quite an adversarial relationship, but now it's very much how can we work with our customers, our tenants, to help them do better.
Good. And I'm interested in this also. You mentioned their experiential. That's going to go to Grant, actually, yeah. You mentioned their experiential. And we've seen a lot of different things coming into centres, both in terms of leisure, food and beverage. Are you seeing a change? I mean, we wrote about you in this issue of the magazine.
Right.
And there you were talking about changes both in terms of demographics, but also the ability, I suppose, for leisure to be able to play a stronger role in, I suppose, that experiential side and drive footfall. What's your sense of how that's changed and how it's moving?
Well, I think we started to see this trend last year that I think the shopping center developers realized that actually bigger is better. So, historically we made work on an execution, for example, of 50 square meters in a common area in a shopping center. And now we've got folks like URW or Simon Property Group that are coming to us and saying, hey, we need something that's going to be even more exciting, create more of an engagement factor with families, et cetera. So they're coming to us now asking for us, hey, I want to do something in a 250 or 300 square meter space. I think what's different in the U.S. compared to what you're seeing in Europe is that the developers in the United States are willing to make that investment themselves. A lot of what we design, we create, manufacture, don't require operations per se. Whereas I think in Europe, folks are thinking, well, I need an operator to do this or that. It needs to be in an inline space. And what we're doing is actually creating these engagement, these experiences inside common areas and malls, which we found when we've got data going back 20 years that proves that it increases footfall, et cetera. But I think, the U.S. retailers, et cetera, have been kind of on the forefront, the battleground really in terms of e-commerce. So they've had to fight this battle, I think, pretty early in the whole process. So that, they're going at it pretty aggressively now and trying to create I think larger experiences, just more engagement for families. And I mean, the investments are increasing. I'd say typically 1.5 to 2 times what we normally would see.
Okay, interesting. And Derek, from your point of view, I mean, we've talked here about a lot of those trends. And in terms of Cherrywood, I suppose you're building something which is going to be around for a significant amount of time. So how much of these trends, when you're looking towards the future, have you tried to build into that in terms of, I suppose, making it, an interesting place, but also a sustainable investment?
Yeah, I think we've tried to sweep in as many as we can. I think first and foremost, Cherrywood is not a mall. It's an urban setting. It's a streets and squares setting that puts an emphasis on the spaces between the buildings to create a sense of place and interest. But then we're bringing in sort of new to market F&B concepts. So first food hall in Ireland, first major bar and restaurant street under one roof in Ireland, destination rooftop bar. These kind of elements, so they're coming into the scheme together with public bikes, showers, click and collect facilities that interface with loading and servicing, ride-sharing lounges, drop-off areas, these types of things. So we're really trying to bring them all in, but of course the interface with all the other uses, so residential, medical, public libraries, co-working office space, and how all that stitches together on the customer journey. That's really what we're trying to do.
I mean, and it's interesting because, I mean, Andy, from your point of view, I mean, I've been looking at some of the things you mentioned there, that there's also logistics, there's co-living, but you're also now, I mean, when I'm looking at retail, I'm beginning to get people sending news reports which are under the retail banner. It says this is a retail story, but it's about a dark kitchen, or it's about, so how do you see retail? Is it impossible to see retail as just what traditionally we saw retail? Does that engage in a whole different series of things now?
So I'm speaking to you as the chairman of the Retail and Entertainment Council of the Urban Land Institute.
There's a clue there then.
There's a clue in there. I'm not quite sure where the E word slipped in recently, but that's what I've taken over. And clearly we all need to be entertained, because otherwise we can do it on the phone. Quick echo of what Derek said. We share some things. We're both Australian. We both have mixed-use projects in Dublin, because Europa is working on the Claris department store, 22,000 square metres icon, which has already been around for 100 years. And we are cutting that into multiple uses, some of which you mentioned, although not with as much WeWork as it appeared was going to be the case. But lovely resi, boutique hotel, food and beverage, regular retail. So we're in the same boat. But essentially we're taking a 22,000 square metre lump of retail and making it into a 7,000 lump of retail, and making exciting stuff out of the rest.
Okay, good. And Stuart, just in terms of, I mean, a lot of the discussion also has been around this sort of idea of placemaking. I mean, these are new schemes that you're talking about, Derek, as well, but also to a certain extent, Grant, you're talking about placemaking as well, creating an interesting area. You're seeing, I guess, projects across the world as well, Stuart. What are you seeing in terms of that sense of placemaking? How's that developing? And I suppose, what are your clients looking for you to design for them, to sort of future-proof their kind of projects?
Okay. Well, I echo a lot of what Derek has already said, actually, in terms of creating spaces, streets and spaces, places for people, basically. It's not just a simple sort of mall arrangement anymore. The importance of and return to the city centre as well is becoming very, very important. And the connectivity basically to transportation, and that goes right the way through to walkability of schemes as well, and within town centres especially, and activating the spaces. We are seeing larger spaces developing for entertainment or events or whatever it is. And then the whole issue of getting the place right is all about understanding the tribes and what we call the tribes of the different age groups, especially getting the mix of uses right and the quality of spaces relevant to wherever it might be. So it's not. We're seeing a whole range of different things happening, really, to be honest, through from more traditional malls, actually in places where security is an issue or weather is an issue. But in sort of Northern Europe, even Southern Europe as well, China, we're seeing a lot of open air schemes, which encourages connectivity as well, and creates better sense of place actually overall.
Okay, good. And I mean, this is actually for Anna and Michelle in a way, because Anna, you're looking at, in terms of the centres that you're managing, you're looking at how you communicate then, how you create or use platforms to be able to communicate better with both the consumers but also the retailers, the food and beverage providers. And you're in a similar position in a way, Michelle, in that. So for both of you, I suppose, how do you see, how important do you think this aspect of it is to creating that sense of place, but also an interesting place to go by connecting with the people within it? Who wants to pick that up?
Okay. Well, in our perspective, communication is definitely the most powerful tool to influence behaviors. So this means that independent if we are focused on B2B or B2C, we need to have this integrated approach to connect people and to talk to people for them to feel engaged with our project. So when we talk about creating communities, from our perspective, we believe that we create many different communities depending on the role that the person is playing in a certain moment. Because we all have different roles that we play every day. So, and according to that, we belong to different communities. So we need to know very well the profile of these people, the lifestyle of these people, their interests also, to try to surprise and to add value to this value proposition that we want to offer them.
Okay, good. Michelle?
I think for us it's all about gathering the data about these communities and then being able to use that data to personalise the messages back to those communities and tribes. So,
And from your point of view, how much of an... I mean, do you see that having an actual impact? Because you're obviously looking at the data. Do you see that having an impact on, I suppose, either the success of the centre or how do you... I mean... How do you, I suppose, analyse what you're doing and the impact of Mallcomm?
Various levels, actually. There's obviously the tenant data that is gathered through it in terms of sales and turnover figures. So it's enabling the management teams to more proactively support their retailers and help them manage. There's the whole maintenance and operational side with predictive maintenance and predictive analysis, which is reducing occupation costs. And then there's the whole data on the customer walking through the door, the consumer walking through the door, and how we can give them what they want by gathering data.
Okay, good. I mean, and I've got a couple of other sort of questions, which are just really for anybody to pick up. I mean, one of those you mentioned there, Andy, as well, that, you know, we're beginning to see more logistics providers here. How do we see the e-commerce side particularly? Are we now seeing that as a friend, as an important part of retail that then needs to be built into all of these shopping centres, all of the mixed-use developments, that actually retail is, logistics in a way, getting it to the customer is simply another part of retail?
Yes.
Okay, good.
A cracking example yesterday from a logistics panel with an Amazon guy was in France, the Maison de la Presse, like the news agent. So common chain across the country. Last year, Amazon rolled out, I think, 1,000 units where you can click and collect. So get your book printed out, delivered to Maison de la Presse, pick it up. That is a lovely marriage. And people obviously buy a newspaper and a coffee at the same time.
Good, yeah, Derek, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, not only what retail's doing click and collect pretty well these days, I think scale retail needs to do the click and collect well, and I said, as I mentioned, it needs to interface with the logistics so that you can do some heavy lifting because there's going to be a lot more of this. That'd be point one. On F&B, I think home deliveries is a trend you can't ignore. So physical F&B destinations need to start to think about how they distribute and deliver from physical locations to people's homes as well. And equally, as you've mentioned, dark kitchens and virtual F&B brands need to be thought about as well. So not only are virtual brands coming into physical units as we know them, but fashion brands, but virtual F&B brands are now looking for physical locations as well. So these are all trends related to logistics servicing that we're seeing.
Yeah, we're buying Dutch logistics on the point of becoming owners of 8 different boxes across the corridor between Rotterdam and Venlo. In that portfolio, we've got several retailers as tenants. IKEA, by way of example, right next to an IKEA store, so they're not going anywhere. We also have a wholesaler who is in an urban last mile location so that the citizens of Utrecht can get their stuff. And absolutely, there's a big link there.
Okay, good. And I think it was probably Selfridge who said the customer is always right about 120 years ago. Are we now, you mentioned WeWork, where actually WeWork just came in for whatever reason, the financials haven't quite worked out as perfectly, but nonetheless they came in and looked at providing a service that people actually wanted. So is that where we are at the moment? Is it that the customer is right and we're really providing interesting things for them in terms of retail?
I would say the customer is right. We have to move with their evolving preferences no matter what it is. You need a platform that's delivering that.
Customers getting more and more powerful as well. So everyone has to adapt and react to demands, and it's a now sort of scenario basically of instant deliveries and all sorts of things. So you have to listen.
Okay, good. And last question, because I know we're going to finish at 10:30. So last question is to everybody: what do you think will be the biggest trend influencing your part of the market in 2020? You're going to go first.
Yeah, this is more around retail and leases and sales. In Dublin, as in the UK, it's a bit different in terms of lease frameworks compared to Asia, Australia, Middle East. So the big trend really commercially that's underpinning everything that's going on now, shorter leases and more transparency of sales. Going forward, if you're not doing those things, I think it's going to be very, very difficult. So that is a trend that is upon us, and I think this, certainly Ireland is going to have to embrace.
Okay, good. Grant, let's...
I think probably for us the biggest challenge and biggest opportunity maybe is how do we intelligently integrate digital, because what we create are very physical environments. We want kids running around, families being active, etc. But I think folks are increasingly, very much dial into technology, and they're looking for a technology component to what it is that we do. So again, we want to integrate digital into our offering, but we don't want to overthink that in terms of just making it a pure digital experience.
Great. Andy?
I think it's looking forward to 12 months to the next MAPIC, a continual gentle fall in capital values in the retail sector, which will be acknowledged by valuers perhaps starting in the next few weeks for the year-end valuations. And our view as a house is that vis-a-vis retail, if we wait 12 months, it's probably not going to be more expensive. And you can't say that about many other sectors.
Okay, good. Stuart?
I think the quality of places is going to be more and more important, and also understanding the scale as well, and especially as you go through into interior design sort of areas as well. Comfort levels need to improve, and levels of service as well. Service becoming more and more important throughout.
Great. Anna?
In our perspective, the most challenging situation for the future is to keep having this emotional relationship with customers when we try to complement the online purchasing with the physical experiences.
Great. Michelle?
I think it's the disappearance of the word shopping centre and the replacement of it with lifestyle destination or some other word that someone's going to come up with. And then it's how to effectively and efficiently use the masses of data that everyone has.